Well, hello there. My name is Ian, and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today, from immersivealbumaudio.com, Atmos mixer extraordinaire Jonathan Cornell is here. And today we are going to talk about the upcoming releases for the month of December 2025. And all of these releases have one thread in common. They're all surround sound releases, either 5.1 or Dolby Atmos. However, I believe all of the selections that we're about to talk about are Dolby Atmos releases, correct? I don't think we have any quad. I don't think we have any 5.1, although we do have instances where, like, for instance, like the Pink Floyd has multiple options.
Actually, there's two. There's the Pink Floyd and the Doobie Brothers, The Captain and Me.
So yeah, let's just get right into it. So kind of a shorter month than usual, but I think that's typical for December because the issue that we tend to run into is the closer we get to Christmas, things don't get reviewed as much. So I think a lot of people tend to push new releases into the new year post November. But speaking of November, we do have a couple of November update titles.
Yes.
The first of which is already out. But this came out on the 14th of November, and we'll get the photo up. This is, my God, a fantastic cover art.
Yes.
Ghost Note, Mustard and Onions, and this is an immersive album, and this is an immersive audio album exclusive. So you want to tell us about this, Jonathan?
Yeah, so this was a streaming exclusive Atmos mix that came out last year. I mean, if I were to describe this band's music, it's kind of like funk fusion, like a little bit of Snarky Puppy in there, a little bit of like late 80s Prince. Like if that kind of thing is up your alley, I would definitely check this out. And it was released through a label called Mac Avenue that's based in Detroit. They have like a mix of kind of jazz and funk records, and like a lot of kind of indie labels that fly under people's radar, they have actually quite a bit of music up in Atmos on streaming. And just recently, we initiated a partnership with them. So we're going to be rolling out these, 10 to 15 Atmos titles in their catalog over the next couple months.
Great.
And I think this is one of the best of the bunch. So really, really good Atmos mix. So I would definitely, if you want to check out, if you're looking to dip your toe in the water and try an IA download, this would be a good one to start with if you like this style of music.
Yeah, this one and the Queens of the Stone Age album are on my wish list. Just based on what you've told me about it, funk fusion, right up my alley.
Well, this is a good chance to plug that we're doing a Black Friday sale this weekend.
Oh,
so
is that right?
That might be a good time for you to, make your inaugural purchase.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. But by the time this comes out, Black Friday will have passed. Are you planning any sales around Christmas or anything like that?
At the moment, the only thing planned is the sale from like Thanksgiving Day through like Cyber Monday.
Okay. So this will be coming out on Cyber Monday. So I guess if people are watching this on Monday, they'll have an opportunity to take part in it.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So moving on to the 21st of November. Here's one that we missed on the previous video, I suppose.
Well, we didn't know about it. Like it was announced the same day that it came out.
Okay.
One of the nice things about Rhino is that it's not like where they set up a pre-order and you have to wait months. They just kind of instantly announce things and you can order them.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a nice surprise because so as far as the Doobie Brothers go, we've had a number of different editions of this album. So going back to the 70s, of course, there was a quad mix of this album. See the quadradisc logo there. So, and then we go forward to the early 2000s, and we had a 5.1 DVD audio, which has an absolutely incredible 5.1 mix by Elliot Shiner, who, as you know,
which is included.
I'm a huge fan of his work. And then in 2020, we had this Doobie Brothers Quadio box set, which of course included the quad mix of this album. They did a nice job, miniaturizing the sleeve with the quad logo. So kind of similar to some of the other reissues that Rhino has done, like the Chicago second album. They've managed to put together all the different surround mixes of this album into one Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And of course, most recently, there was an Atmos mix of this album that just suddenly appeared on streaming services, I want to say earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a good opportunity. Of course, if you missed the DVD audio, which has been out of print, since like the early 2000s, or if you missed the Doobie Brothers Quadio box set, which is also has been out of print for a couple of years now. I'm a big fan of this era of the Doobie Brothers. I really like Tom Johnston's voice. I like this stuff a little better than like the Michael McDonald era where it got a little bit smoother.
I see.
There's some great tracks on this record, like China Grove, of course, one of their biggest songs. The main reason I would recommend this is for the 5.1 mix. I think that's the best version of the album. If the Atmos mix is the same one that's on streaming services, which I don't see why it wouldn't be, I didn't think it was particularly good. It just kind of sounded like the stereo mix spread across all the other speakers. Whereas the 5.1 and quad mixes are very much like, different instruments placed in different speakers. And it's quite interesting to compare the quad and 5.1 mixes because they are different. Like a lot of quad mixes, sometimes the drums are in the back, like on the Joni Mitchell stuff we talked about. Mm-hmm. And the 5.1 mix is very much your typical kind of drums in front, and then the rears are used for things like the keyboards, guitar. One special shout out is there's a song on this record called Without You where there's two drummers. And in the 5.1 mix, one drum kit is in the front, the other one is in the back. So it feels like you're in the middle of them. And then as I recall in the quad mix, both of the drummers are in the back. One is like in the left rear and the other one's in the right rear,
wow.
Which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, I love that Rhino's continuing to do these Atmos Blu-rays. I hope they do more of them of classic catalog stuff like this. And the main reason I would recommend this is if you haven't heard the 5.1 mix or the quad mix, I'd say definitely go for it.
And I was just doing a quick Google search, but I didn't get very far on it. Who's doing the Atmos mix? Is this Shiner or is this somebody new coming in and doing this?
Oof, I wish it was Shiner. Yeah. It's definitely not one of his kind of mixes.
Right.
I believe it was done by a guy named Sean Deely, who's the chief engineer at Sweetwater Studios.
Okay.
And he also is doing the Atmos mix of the new Big Big Train album that's coming out early next year. Yeah, I think for people who've seen enough of these videos know like who does the surround mix really does matter.
It does. Yeah, it does. And
because in a way the surround mixer is kind of almost like a second producer.
Right.
In the sense that, the way they kind of arrange the different elements in the mix really does change the experience. It's kind of a silly thing to say, but as you and I know, surround mixes vary wildly from person to person, from title to title.
Yeah. This is an opportunity, I think, like you said, to own a great 5.1 mix that's been out of print for a while, as well as the vintage quad mix. And I'm thinking about dipping my toes in the Doobie, so I might consider this one.
And I'll say one other annoying thing about the original DVD audio is it's one of those flipper discs where it's a two-sided DVD.
I remember those.
And the surround is on one side and the stereo is on the other. So if you want to switch to the stereo mix, you have to like pull the disc out and flip it over. So I assume, on the Blu-ray, it will be like any other Blu-ray where you can just select the streams on the fly.
And what a lot of people don't realize, when they say like, oh, it's a cash grab and they're making us buy these again, they're milking the fans, is that a lot of these, older DVDs aren't really authored for modern players.
But also like who knows about this? We're kind of in a niche a bit with, interacting with people on forums who've collected all these discs. But there's a lot of people who probably have just discovered surround or Atmos and they've just bought a system and they don't know what was released in 5.1 20 years ago or what was released in quad 40 or 50 years ago. So I see no reason why these shouldn't be made available again.
Yes, I agree with you on that. So moving forward to the 4th of December, and here's a release that, actually a collection of releases that I'm really excited for. And this is New Order. There's 3 albums here, all newly remixed by Steven Wilson in Dolby Atmos and 5.1. And I'm guessing there will be new stereo mixes because generally he does that. But as you were explaining to me, that's their first record, Movement. And then Low Life is what, their 3rd album?
Yes. So there's an album between Movement and Low Life that's called Power, Corruption, and Lies. Okay. And I understand the reason why they didn't release that one is because too many of the original multi-tracks are missing.
I see.
So they skipped that album. So there's Movement, Low Life, and then Brotherhood, I think, is their fourth album.
Yeah.
And they continue to make, there are more records after Brotherhoods. There could potentially be more releases. All I can say is that, you know, no one does an 80s mix like Steven Wilson.
Correct.
It's funny because when he started doing these mixes, you know, people thought he was kind of like a 70s guy because he was doing all the, you know, Jethro Tull, Yes, all that stuff. But I mean, really the time period that he, as he said in interviews, that he grew up and started to really love music was the 80s.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite mixes that he's done are of 80s records, you know, like Seeds of Love.
Yes.
Or Phil Collins, No Jacket Required. You know, there's so many we could talk about. So to preface this, these mixes came out on streaming last year. Well, two of them did. For whatever reason, the Brotherhood album never showed up on streaming. So I haven't heard that one yet. But Movement and Low Life have been up on Apple Music since September of 2024. And the only songs I knew by this band is their most famous, it's a very long single. It's called Blue Monday. And at one time, according to what I've read online, it was like the best-selling 12-inch single of all time.
Wow.
And I believe it was a non-album single, like it was originally just a standalone 12-inch, but it's included as a bonus track on that Power, Corruption, and Lies album. So if you buy any CD reissue of that, typically it's included at the end. So I knew that song. And then on the Low Life album, there's a great instrumental that's called Elegia, which has been used in lots of different movies and TV shows. The most recent place I heard it was in Stranger Things, which is fitting that we're talking about it because the new season of Stranger Things comes out today.
Oh, okay.
But that's a super cool kind of dark instrumental. It was written as a tribute to Ian Curtis, who was the singer of Joy Division. So I'm not super well versed in the history, but my understanding is that after Ian Curtis passed away, the surviving members of Joy Division formed this new band called New Order.
That's right.
And the first record, Movement, is very much kind of a continuation of that like dark electronic style of Joy Division. And you were telling me you had just started listening to that record and you're already a fan of it.
Yeah, I managed to play a little bit of it while I was just kind of driving around doing errands, Christmas shopping, that sort of thing. And yeah, it put me in the mind of, and this is a record we haven't had a chance to talk about yet, Peter Hamill's The Future Now, which is a great surround mix from Stephen W. Taylor, which came out in like October. But that album mixes like a lot of those drum machines and like really ominous loops and kind of dark synthesizers and textures and stuff like that. And this kind of very much fits into that same feeling for me. I mean, it's not as weird, perhaps, or experimental as the Peter Hamill record, although it has its moments. But I, as a Joy Division fan, I was really loving this. And I pre-ordered the Movement record. Now, you'll have to tell me, since you've heard one of the others, is it similar or is it more of like starting to break away from that sound?
Yeah, Low Life is definitely like there's more of like a pop element to it. It's not quite as like sort of abrasive and dark.
Okay.
I mean, I think you could draw maybe some comparisons to like Tears for Fears or other synth pop bands of that era. I think maybe like there's a little like Depeche Mode in there.
Yeah, especially The Hurting. That's what this kind of put me in the mind of, like The Hurting album. I'm talking about Movement, you know, not the other one so much.
But yeah, Low Life, the other one that I've heard on streaming, is definitely like a little more accessible than Movement, I would say. And then there is an Atmos mix of Blue Monday on streaming services, but that's not included on any of the Blu-rays because it doesn't go with either of these albums.
Right.
So I mean, it would have been nice if they could have put that in as a bonus track on one of these. I mean, I know it doesn't really make sense because it goes with the Power, Corruption, and Lies album, which isn't being reissued. So I don't know like what they could do with that. I mean, maybe there could be like a greatest hits compilation they could put it in. It's just a shame that it's not being released in like full res quality because that mix is incredible of Blue Monday. That's on streaming services.
Do you know if that's a Steven Wilson mix too? Or
yes. Oh,
super. Well, all right. This is something that I honestly have no idea if my subscribers would be interested in a review of it. So you guys are gonna have to let me know in the comments if you're curious about this New Order, if these New Order records.
Oh, and the other thing I would add is I had said, of course, that the Atmos mixes of Movement and Low Life have been on Apple Music for about a year now. But
Yeah,
these Blu-rays also come with stereo and 5.1 mixes, which were never released before. So
right.
that's one of the great things about Steven is that he still does a dedicated 5.1 mix. Like
Yeah,
it's not just a reduction of the Atmos version.
yeah. All right, so we are moving on to this is the day after December 5th. And this is something I'm extremely excited for. This is Bryan Ferry's Boys and Girls, the spiritual successor to Roxy Music's Avalon, which is not only one of my favorite records, but it's also one of my favorite Atmos mixes from Bob Clearmountain. That's an album that sounded great in 5.1, sounds great in Atmos. So this is kind of the same production team. I don't know about like producers and stuff, but it's definitely Clearmountain doing the mixing, and obviously Bryan Ferry's songs. So this is a record that has been recommended to me so many times by my friend Jocko, who's also a frequent guest on the channel. But yeah, I've got this on pre-order and I can't wait. So tell us about Boys and Girls since you've heard it.
Well, like Avalon, it had a 5.1 mix that was done about 20 years ago. So this is the original 5.1 SACD, which is pretty rare and hard to come by now. So I'm glad even though, the main selling point of the new reissue is the Atmos mix, it has the old 5.1 as well, just like Avalon. So you can compare them.
Mm-hmm.
And in the case of Avalon, the two mixes were pretty different in places.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're both great, and it's cool to have the choice to switch between them. But like you had said, this is the same production team that was behind Avalon. It's Rhett Davies was the producer, and
great.
I think he had done some work with King Crimson, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 80s albums. Well, two of them, I think. I think he did Discipline and Beat.
Yeah, and Clearmountain mixed a version of, I think there's a song called Sleepless on 3 of a Perfect Pair. And he also mixed the new Beat live album in surround.
Yes.
So it's kind of some cool, connections there.
There's more overlap than that. And you know, Bryan Ferry auditioned for King Crimson in 1972, and he failed the audition, but what he got out of it was EG's management card. So Roxy Music got signed to EG Records, and who produced that first Roxy Music record but Pete Sinfield. And then by the 80s, Roxy Music were more popular. They were I think they were often on the same bill. Like there's a performance from the Beat Tour where King Crimson are actually opening for Roxy Music, and there's video of it, and they filmed King Crimson's bit, but King Crimson weren't given the lighting that Roxy Music were given, so it's very dark and stark looking. But there is a video from the Avalon tour, which is currently unavailable, sadly, from that same night. So these two bands kind of intersect in really weird ways. But anyway, go on.
Well, it's very funny to me that the only two Roxy albums that are in surround are Avalon, which is their last record, and their first record, which is just called Roxy Music. And there's a gap that's about as big as you could get between those two records. Like it sounds like different bands.
Yes.
I had heard Avalon first, and then when I bought there was a box set a couple years ago that had a Steven Wilson mix of the first Roxy Music record. I was like, whoa, this is different. I mean, I like them both, for different reasons, but you could understand if you've heard the first couple of records by Roxy Music that there is some crossover, certainly with kind of prog and art rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And by the time of Avalon, they had kind of, I wouldn't say the music is simpler, because the production is a lot more sophisticated, but it's definitely kind of more accessible,
direct,
and more in line with other kind of 80s like synthwave kind of bands.
Romantic, maybe new romantic.
Yeah. So Bryan Ferry had made solo records concurrently while he was in Roxy Music throughout the course of the 70s, but this was his first record after Roxy Music broke up after Avalon.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is this was one of those records like where it's kind of that Steely Dan thing of like hiring tons of session musicians, to make it perfect. So there's some really cool like guest guitar players on this record. Like there's a song called Windswept, which has a great solo from David Gilmour on it. Mm-hmm. There's another track that has a Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits playing guitar on it.
Wow.
And yeah, like all the best session players. Like this is like Avalon. It's about as perfect sounding a record as you can imagine. I would say the music on this one is a little bit more aggressive than Avalon. Like Avalon is this
Interesting.
very kind of relaxed kind of record. On this one, like it's hitting a little bit harder.
Hmm.
But the original 5-1 mix was amazing, like the Avalon one. And the Atmos mix of this record and a bunch of other Bryan Ferry solo records that came out later were all released on Apple Music in July of this year. So I know a lot of people say, like, why is this one being released on Blu-ray again? Because we already have the SACD. I think they went with this one first because it's the 40th anniversary.
Hmm.
Came out in 1985. But there are the other Bryan Ferry records that haven't been released in surround before. There's one called Bet Noir. There's
Hmm.
another one called, I think, Mamona or Mamuna is the way you say it. But the Atmos mixes of those are done and they're up on Apple Music. So I think, assuming this one does well, they will probably eventually do the other ones on Blu-ray.
Well, it's already sold out on SDE, so I think it's done well enough
Yes.
to make those other releases inevitable. Yeah, I think
And
it's done well.
the other thing I would add is that there was a previous SDE release of like a Bryan Ferry greatest hits collection
Hmm.
that has it has a selection of songs from a bunch of these albums and some like earlier stuff from the 70s. Like there's a solo track called Let's Stick Together from like the mid 70s that's really, really good and kind of more in the line of the early Roxy music, like the kind of zany weirdness.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, that's been sold out for a while, but you can find it on Apple Music. It's called the Retrospective Collection.
Hmm.
And as far as I could tell, the couple of songs from Boys and Girls that are on that, which are "Don't Stop the Dance," "Slave to Love," and "Windswept," they're the same mixes that are on the Boys and Girls Atmos album that's on Apple Music, which should in turn be the same thing that's on the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
So all that is to say, I think if you liked Avalon, if you have the 5.1 SACD or you like it, this is definitely worth a listen.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this because Avalon's one of my favorites. I just played it the other night again, and it's always a pleasure to go back to that record. So we've got another immersive audio album download coming on the same day. This is the 5th of December. And this is a Pixies record. How do you pronounce this? Trompe Le Monde?
Trompe Le Monde, I think.
Trompe Le Monde. Yeah. I've heard this album years ago, and I don't remember a thing about it. But I've always loved Surfer Rosa and Doolittle.
Yeah, so the ones that have been done in Atmos are Doolittle, Bossa Nova, and this one. And those are kind of like a nice trilogy. I agree it would be great if they would go back and do Surfer Rosa and Atmos.
Yes.
And yeah, like a lot of records, these were just kind of unceremoniously dropped on Apple Music. Like Trompe Le Monde and Bossa Nova came out like over the summer this year, like maybe July or August. So as I've said before, we're able to release these in IA because of our partnership with the Beggars Group label, which has the 4AD back catalog. And they've done an interesting mix of kind of new and old stuff. Like there's some older records that have been remixed in Atmos, like these Pixies ones. And then there's also newer bands, like if you're familiar with The National, they're kind of one of 4AD's biggest newer acts now. A couple of their most recent albums have been remixed in Atmos. So I've often said that there's kind of a real lack of 90s stuff available in surround. Like there's a lot of 70s stuff, there's a lot of 80s stuff, and then when you get to the 90s, there aren't really as many choices. So I appreciate that this label is going back and doing some classic catalog stuff from that time, and it's great that we're able to release these as the high-res downloads, because as far as I know, they have no plans to do Blu-rays of any of these records.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a good reason why a lot of 90s records haven't come out. Do you think that's down to format issues, like the use of DAT tapes and stuff like that?
That's one possibility. I also think like a lot of the music is just not really conducive to it.
Sure.
Like you think about, though, it's funny because I was going to say like a lot of like the Seattle grunge bands haven't had really anything done in surround. But now that I think about it, kind of since this like streaming Atmos revolution, a lot of that stuff has been done. You know, they did Pearl Jam's 10 and Verse are on Apple Music. They've done Alice in Chains, Dirt, and what's the other famous one?
Facelift.
The one that has Man in the Box.
Yeah, I think that's Facelift. Yeah.
So they've done those two. The Soundgarden stuff they've done box sets of Super Unknown and Bad Motorfinger with 5/1 mixes. So really a lot of that stuff actually has been covered.
Yeah.
But still comparatively to the 70s and 80s, I think like I would love more of this kind of 90s like grungier alt rock stuff, and the Pixies mixes have all been great. I would say the Doolittle one is probably the best of the three, but they're all definitely worth listening to. So, you know, if you log in for the Black Friday sale, this is, well, this is past the Black Friday sale actually, but the other two records, Bossa Nova and Doolittle, will be included as part of it.
Yeah, that might be my excuse to grab Doolittle. I absolutely love Doolittle, and would love to hear it.
Yeah. And if you do go for Doolittle, it also comes with the old 5/1 mix of it that was done about 10 years ago. So you get two options with that one.
Good to know. So we're going to break with the convention and talk about a record that has been delayed. This is Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Welcome to the Pleasuredome, mixed in Dolby Atmos and 5.1 and presumably stereo by Steven Wilson. This was originally supposed to come out on Halloween, and we got a message from Paul Sinclair that had, dealing with manufacturing delays, and it was delayed until mid-November. And now we have gotten a confirmation that this will be shipping on or around December 8th, 2025. So we talked a little bit about this in our previous video, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but if you want to give folks a brief recap, the floor is yours.
I would only say that I think this has the potential to be one of Steven Wilson's best mixes.
Sure.
Because, it's classic 80s stuff. Trevor Horn was the producer of this record. It starts off with this epic, 16-minute title track, which is one of the highlights of the record.
With of course, Steve Howe on guitar. Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, this record is very much like a kind of studio creation.
Mm-hmm.
I think the story goes that basically the only thing that on the song Relax, the only element that was kept was Holly Johnson's vocal. And the rest of the band was completely mixed off of the initial demo. And it's, it took them weeks or months, Trevor Horn trying different production styles, experimenting. And this is really right in that sweet spot of it was a popular record, but it's very kind of, it's experimental.
Mm-hmm.
There's this kind of interesting corner of the 80s where you think of there were these popular kind of, synth pop, synth wave action, like Duran Duran, or even you think about someone like Madonna. And then there's this kind of more experimental corner with a lot of these British bands, like this example, or we talked about New Order, even Tears for Fears, I think kind of right at the axis of those records were massive, but they're also a little more sophisticated than your typical kind of what you think of when you think of the cliche 80s,
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about this. I was disappointed it was delayed like anybody else, but
sure.
It hasn't dropped on Apple Music yet either. I don't know if because the SDE Blu-ray was just one option. There was also a box set that came with the Blu-ray. I don't know if the box set ended up shipping on time and it was only the SDE Blu-ray that was delayed. So maybe some people have heard it already.
I believe so. I believe the box set did ship, but I'm thinking there's probably a quadraphonic quad pull on this. So that's I think that would be an easy way to check.
But I think this is going to be a fun one, to talk about once we both heard it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I have no idea if my subscribers are interested in it, but this might be just a throw it against the wall and see if it sticks sort of thing, because I'm excited for it. And I know the song Relax, of course, everybody knows it. And I listened to the 16-minute epic that you were talking about, and that was enough for me. I snapped it up. Now, this may not be necessarily of interest to you, but somebody on the Quad forums posted an early version of Relax. Did you watch that?
Yeah, it was the original demo or something like
that.
Yeah.
And they stick in a David Lynch reference. Right in the middle of it, they sing "In Heaven Everything Is Fine" from the Lady in the Radiator song from the film Eraserhead. And that just made me go, because David Lynch is my favorite filmmaker. And that just made me go, wow, my worlds are colliding.
Yeah.
And I would hope that somewhere that version is included on here, but I have no idea. But still, go check that out on YouTube. That's a fun little early version, and you can get an idea what Trevor Horn saw on television. Was like, I got to produce this, guys. It's a cool little historical piece. So I know this is going to be the big one. And this comes out on December 12th, which is my mother's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. I got you a Pink Floyd set. You know, it's already one of my favorite releases of the year because if you look at the contents of this Blu-ray, it is absolutely stacked. This is an XTC style box set on a disc situation where you get the new Atmos mix, which is James Guthrie's. You get his 5.1 mix, which was issued previously. And you get the original mix, but you also get the quadraphonic mix.
Yes.
In addition to that, you also get a show which has been restored by Stephen Wilson, and he did confirm on his Facebook page that his restoration work involved just finding the best sources available. There's no AI demixing technology employed here. This is all him just going into these audience recordings and finding the best sources to kind of patch this thing together. And as somebody who's done that kind of work, particularly for the Cuneiform record label out of Washington, D.C., this has just got me so excited. The idea that Stephen did anything like the kind of work that I've done, like it makes me really look forward to hearing it.
Well, I think it bodes well for us that he continues to be involved in these Pink Floyd reissues because he's sort of slowly become involved. Like he did Rick Wright's Wet Dream in 5.1 Atmos, which
is a great album.
Then, of course, he did Pompeii, which was a huge deal.
Yes.
And, you know, as we've said in other videos, I would love for him to get a shot at the earlier stuff that hasn't been done in surround yet. You know, these albums like Obscured by Clouds or even their debut album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, if they have the multi-tracks for it.
I think Saucer Full of Secrets is probably the most likely because I think the elements do exist for that, but I'm not sure about Piper at the Gates of Dawn. So as we did say, this has been issued previously, and this is the Analog Productions version, which is a CD and SACD. There's an SACD layer to this. And I'll be honest with you folks, I paid the same amount just for this SACD as this new Blu-ray. In fact, I think the new Blu-ray might be significantly less than I paid for this. So really awesome new release.
Yeah, and I've got the it's funny that you said like it's like a box set on one disc, which makes sense because we've already had the box set. There was the immersion edition that came out in 2011, and I've got the Blu-ray here from it, which it's got Guthrie's 5.1 mix, which was released in 2011, and it's got the digital transfer of the Brian Humphreys quad mix that was done in 76. So I assume that the version of the quad mix that we get on this Blu-ray, the new Blu-ray, will be the same as the old one. Somehow I doubt that they went back to the, half-inch master and transferred it again, which is fine because the quad transfer on this sounds good, I think.
It does, yeah. Although, as we said on our quad video, we have some misgivings about the quad mix itself.
Yes. The quad mix is like, it has some moments that are like absolutely incredible. And it's got some moments where you're like, what were they thinking?
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of mixes. So, all in all, while I like the approach of the quad mix to kind of really separate the instruments, the James Guthrie mix is probably like a more consistent experience overall.
Yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Even though sometimes I wish he would be like a little more aggressive in pulling the instruments apart. Yeah. But it sounds good, and I'm sure his Atmos mix will be, an expansion on top of that.
Yeah. Now, we did kind of allude to this, but we've already had James Guthrie Atmos mixes of Dark Side of the Moon and Animals, which my assistant will show you here.
Yes. One of the disappointing things about the Dark Side edition was the quad mix wasn't included in it. So right. I'm glad that they've listened to the fan outcry, if there was one. It's because none of the band members have ever officially commented on this, but I mean, I think it's been kind of implied that the quad mixes were done either without their supervision or without the same kind of care and attention that the stereo mixes were. I think, Alan Parsons, who did the quad mix of Dark Side, has said like basically he did it by himself one afternoon with no one supervising him, because nobody knew it was going to be this huge record.
Right. Yeah, and you get the sense that quad was a bit of an afterthought, because I think they knew that most people were going to be listening to it on stereo. So I don't know how much attention they gave to it all the time.
By the time Wish You Were Here was done, like quad was kind of on its way out already anyway. I think they knew that probably not that many people would have heard it. It was one of the last like pop rock releases from Columbia Records.
Yeah. Now, real quick, before we move on, I think this is a great opportunity, because you had mentioned before that Animals is your favorite Atmos mix, and there's something intangible about it that bothers me about the Animals mix. So do you want to talk about this just briefly?
Well, the Animals mix is the most different of the three, right?
Yeah.
In the case of Dark Side and Wish You Were Here, like those records already sounded great, and it was just kind of about making it a more immersive experience.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like, I would say the kind of overall balance and feel of those two mixes, the Guthrie ones, is very similar to the original stereos. In the case of Animals, in some quarters, people had been saying that record wasn't as well recorded or mixed as the other two.
No, they built their own studio, I think.
Britannia Row, right?
Yeah.
So in the case of Animals, it was never, the two records that my dad had were Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here. And for whatever reason, and The Wall. He also had The Wall. But for whatever reason, he never bought Animals. So I never heard it until recently. And so it's not one of those records where like, it's in my DNA and I know every little detail. But if you compare the 2018 mixes in stereo and 5.1 and the original 77 mix, they do sound quite different.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
And I know for some people it was like, wow, like this sounds as hi-fi as Wish You Were Here now. And for other people, it was like, it's kind of lost some of its character from the original.
That's my issue.
That's, the tightrope that you walk on with these reissues, right?
Yeah. Well, even Dark Side of the Moon, there was something kind of, again, intangible. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was that bothered me about it. But when I go back and listen to the 2003 5.1 mix, which I have on SACD over there, I should have grabbed it. That one sounds rather lovely to me. So, back to the Animals mix, it's the drums that bother me. Like they're just like a little bit heavy-handed or maybe modern sounding. Some of my friends even suggested that maybe the drums had been replaced with triggers or something, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's just that maybe the drum sound was a little underwhelming on the original mix, but I think Guthrie went a little bit too far in the other direction, at least for my taste.
There's like a shocking amount of low end on the new Animals mix. Like there's a couple bits like in Dogs where they hit like a Taurus pedal and like your whole room will shake.
Yes. Well, the album always was bass heavy. Yeah, it always was.
But the reason why I had said it was my favorite was because I think of all of James Guthrie's surround mixes for Pink Floyd, it's the most adventurous.
I see.
Like there's at the very beginning of Dogs, like the acoustic guitar is panned from the back to the front as they're getting drier, which is super cool. There's that whole extended instrumental section where Rick Wright's keyboard solo swirls around the room. I think compared to the Dark Side and Wish You Were Here 5.1 mixes, the Animals mix is definitely a lot more of that kind of separating the instruments. You could hear different members of the band largely in different spaces of the room. Whereas I feel like on parts of Dark Side of the Moon, it was kind of like a wider version of the stereo mix with maybe like some sound effects discreetly placed, like the cash registers in Money or the echoes in Us and Them. So I'm curious if for Wish You Were Here, if he kind of sticks to that style of kind of like not too much separation of the band elements, but more discrete placement of the sound effects, or if it's more like the Animals mix where it kind of feels like you're in the studio surrounded by the band. That's certainly the approach of the quad mix, balance issues notwithstanding.
Yeah. Well, I'll just summarize this kind of a little off topic conversation by saying that the 2011 mix 5.1 mix of Wish You Were Here is one of my absolute favorite surround discs. So if the Atmos mix carries on what was started there, if it's just basically an expanded version of the 5.1 mix, I think I'll be very happy with it.
I mean, there's a truly made for Atmos moment on this record, which is in Welcome to the Machine with the elevator. So if the elevator doesn't go to the height speakers, I'm going to be disappointed. I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? It's like I would be disappointed if the Thunderstorm and Riders of the Storm wasn't in the height speakers, right?
Right. All right, so this is the same day, and we have a massive set here from the Pineapple Thief. What's this called? Retracting Our Steps. And these are new Atmos mixes from the Pineapple Thief's chief songwriter and singer, Bruce Sword. So, Jonathan, you want to tell us about this?
Yeah, so I think, at some point, if you get into this music, this would be a good band to do a whole video about.
Okay.
Because in a lot of ways, it's interesting how Bruce Sword and Steven Wilson's careers kind of mirror each other.
Mm-hmm.
They both kind of came from nothing, making music in their bedrooms and being like that kind of person who wears all the hats, producer, engineer, singer.
Inspiration.
Yeah. And I got into the Pineapple Thief in 2019, which was like a little later than maybe some people have, because they've been around for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And the release that got me into them was this Blu-ray called Where We Stood. And Where We Stood is probably like maybe the single most packed Blu-ray release that I can think of that's ever been done. It has a live show that they did in London when they were touring this album called Your Wilderness, which came out in 2016. And the reason why that album is significant in their discography is because that's when Gavin Harrison joined the band as their drummer. And since then, he's become kind of a major part of not only as the drummer, but he's also a songwriter. He contributes to like the arranging of the songs. So he has kind of changed their sound a lot. Like if you listen to the album before this, which is called Magnolia, and this one, they do sound very different.
Yeah.
So this Blu-ray, it has a 5/1 mix of the Your Wilderness solo album from Your Wilderness studio album from 2016. It's got the live show where they do all of that and a bunch of other, songs from the back catalog. And it's got the surround mix of the live show is like one of those ones where there are instruments in the rear, like it is a more immersive kind of mix. And it's also got some other stuff like acoustic versions and bonus songs. So I picked this up kind of just because I was looking for something new to listen to in surround at the time. And I since then I've really become kind of like a dyed-in-the-wool fan of the band. I've bought everything that Bruce has done in surround since. He's also done surround mixes for a bunch of other bands. And since then, they've released a bunch of other studio records. So there's Dissolution from 2018. And then there's my personal favorite, another one of my pandemic albums. You and I were just saying one of our pandemic albums was Tears for Fears, Seeds of Love. But my other one was Pineapple Thief, Versions of the Truth, which came out September 2020. Then we talked about the live albums video. There's this sort of live in the studio pandemic era release called Nothing But the Truth, where they kind of do their live set in like a studio setting. So it's really cool. It's got like the energy of a live show, but the sonics of a studio recording. And then there's their most recent album, It Leads to This, which came out in 2024. And one thing I can show that was very cool was I've since gotten to meet Bruce a couple times, and I've interviewed him, and I play tested the mixes for this. So I got I got to be in the liner notes.
Very cool.
Really cool. So, like I was saying before, the career of the Pineapple Thief and Bruce Sword goes back to the late 90s. And I think you can divide the discography kind of into 3 stages. So there's the original sort of phase, which was 1999 to 2006, when even though it was a band called the Pineapple Thief, it really was Bruce like playing, recording, and doing everything.
Yeah.
And those early albums all have programmed drums that like using a sampler. And they were originally released through an indie label called Cyclops Records. So in 2023, they put out a box set. These albums are now all owned by KScope, called How Did We Find Our Way, which has the first 6 albums from 1999 to 2006, all remixed in stereo 5.1 and Atmos from Bruce. And this is one of my favorite box sets ever. Like, it's got these super detailed liner notes where talking about, Bruce's backstory and how he got into music, and the sort of traumatic background behind making some of these records. And it's pretty inspiring to read because, like I said, he really kind of came from nothing and built this band. So this is a great box set. Unfortunately, I think it's out of print, and all the albums are on one Blu-ray. So all 6 records managed to fit on one Blu-ray.
That's the way you do it.
Yeah. So now, after 2007, they left Cyclops Records and they joined KScope, which is part of Snapper Music, where they still are today.
Yeah.
And, KScope was like where a lot of Steven Wilson's early solo records, like Raven That Refused to Sing, Hand Cannot Erase, were through KScope. Eventually, he left them to join Virgin in maybe like 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, I want to say the Future Bites era around that time, or maybe it was, I think the one before that was on Caroline. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, which is also like a Universal Virgin thing, I think.
Yeah.
But so this latest box set, which is called Retracing Our Steps, it takes us from 2007 to 2014, which was right up to the last record before Gavin Harrison joined the band. And then the recent couple of albums, which have already all been done in surround, is like the Gavin Harrison era.
So this is the early years of the Pineapple Thief?
It's like the middle years.
The middle years, okay.
Yeah. Now, one of the cool things about the set is that these albums that were made between 2007 and 2014, those are like, the peak years of the Loudness Wars, right?
Yeah.
So the original versions of these albums are all like super compressed. Particularly that last record, which is my favorite of the bunch. It's called Magnolia from 2014. Like, I wouldn't say like the cliche that it's unlistenable, but there's some of the abrasive moments are not pleasing to listen to, some of the louder tracks. And this is like, I would say they were kind of rocking a little harder in this era than they are now. Like, there's parts of these albums you can make comparisons to bands like maybe like Muse, or kind of that like early 2000s Porcupine Tree, like In Absentia or Dead Wing.
The Gavin Harrison era.
Exactly.
Ironically,
I wouldn't call this metal by any stretch. Maybe there's some moments that are kind of metallic, and Bruce Sword has this he's got this like Tom York kind of voice. So there's a bit of, that Radiohead influence in there. And they were starting to get away from doing like longer songs. Like on the earlier records, like the first record, Abducted at Birth from 1999, there's like a 20-minute song on that album. And by the time we get to these, 2007 to 2014 albums, the songwriting is starting to get a little more concise. Production gets a little more sophisticated. They start using real drums on the last 2 records, All the Wars and Magnolia. So these new stereo mixes and 5.1 and Atmos, which I could say because I play tested the set for Bruce. So I've heard these mixes already. And I would say they're revelatory compared to the originals, because they're finally like, they sound dynamic and hi-fi.
Excellent.
And Bruce Sword, I think, is one of the best, Atmos surround mixers out there. And there's lots of elements to play with in these songs, multi-tracked vocals and different layers of guitar and keyboard, percussion. And then the other thing I'll say is, on top of the studio records, there's all kinds of like extra bonus material that's also been mixed in surround. So there are a couple of EPs that were released between the albums, 2010, 2011. I think there's a couple of unreleased songs that he finally is putting out. And one of my favorite things that Bruce Sword often does with his records is he'll do acoustic mixes. So I think his writing process starts like just with him and acoustic guitar, and then he kind of rearranges the songs after that. But on all the previous Pineapple Thief records that have been done in surround, he'll put on these acoustic versions of the songs, which are not just like, mute all the instruments except for acoustic guitar and vocals. Like, it's actually a different performance.
Oh, that's very fascinating.
Yeah. So there's basically the last playlist on this new box set is just called like the acoustic versions. And it has like 10 or 11 songs that are from across these couple of albums that are sort of rearranged acoustically, like with him just playing the guitar and multi-tracking his voice. So, all that is to say, if you're a fan of the music, if you're a fan of like some of those influences I mentioned, like, Radiohead, Porcupine Tree, kind of maybe Muse, this is a great value. Super underrated band. I've seen them live twice since, for the 2 tours they've come to the States since I've been a fan. They're really good live. And I would heartily recommend this.
Terrific. And I was just looking it up on Laser CD, which is a great music vendor from New Jersey. And this is an 8-disc box set, 7 CDs and 1 Blu-ray, and it's running for $125. So that's not a bad deal for 8 discs, especially given that, there's 7 albums here and you can get all of them on 1 Blu-ray disc.
Yeah. So I know some people are like, why can't they just release the Blu-ray separately? It's like, well, it's got 8 albums on it. It wouldn't really be cost effective for them to release an album with 8 Blu-rays for $20.
No. And not only that, but it's so hard to get people to buy a standalone Blu-ray. Like, have you noticed that phenomenon? Like, everybody says, just release it on standalone Blu-ray. But then when they do that, they don't sell very well. You got to cater to the different interests and the different crowds. Like, some people are only going to be listening to the CDs. Like
I've said, there's the super fans and then there's everyone else, right?
Yeah.
And there's kind of different tiers of super fans. There's like people like us who have been into this for years and we have kind of the older SACD or DVD editions of these albums. And there's a lot of people who are just discovering Atmos and spatial audio that have no idea what's out there.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some people who are buying these for the stereo mixes and they could potentially be, Atmos or surround converts. Like some people might be wondering like, what's on that Blu-ray? Like, what if I play that? Yeah. So I think, the labels do the best they can to create these sort of cost-effective products that can appeal to everyone.
Yeah.
And in the case of the original, the 1999 to 07 box set, these did sell out.
Yeah.
And I think this was $99 at retail. So the new one is like a little more expensive.
Yeah.
But KScope is one of IAA's label partners. And we've been talking about for a while of taking the material on the 99 to 07 box set and releasing those as downloads. So that could happen eventually, assuming they don't want to repress the book edition. Yeah. But this is like a big yearbook and like the text is easy to read and look at while you're listening. And this isn't like there are some box sets where it's like, the book just has a bunch of illustrations. Like there's like really detailed essays in this, like a lot of work was put into it.
Yeah.
And I expect the same will be true of the new box set.
Terrific. All right. So this is also on December 12th. And I have to take this opportunity again to say happy birthday, Mom, because my mom loves the Alan Parsons Project. And she introduced me to them.
It's funny that we're jumping into this because in the Pineapple Thief box set, when Bruce Sword was talking about like his influences getting to music, his favorite band when he was a kid was the Alan Parsons Project.
Oh, there you go. That's one of my favorites. And we were kind of alluding to this off air, but this is one of my very favorite albums of all time. This album,
I got a copy too.
Yeah, as a young person, I think I heard that album before I heard In the Court of the Crimson King, any Beatles stuff. Like, Alan Parsons is formative material for me, and that's again thanks to my mom. So. Yeah, this is an album that this is the second Alan Parsons Project album, and it has been released as part of an amazingly expensive box set that we talked about, I think, either on the September or October video. And again, this is for those of you who are saying, just give me a standalone Blu-ray. Well, here you go. Here's your standalone Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's interesting because the strategy with the Alan Parsons releases has been they put out the box set first, and then they do the standalone Blu-ray like a couple months to a year later. Yeah. In this case, the standalone Blu-ray came very quickly after. I remember for Eye in the Sky, it was like over a year it took to come out. And the reason for that might be because these have been released kind of across different labels. Yeah. Like I think Tales was a Universal release, then Eye in the Sky was Sony. Yeah. And then Ammonia Avenue, I think, was Cherry Red. I want to say.
I think you're
Ammonia
right about
Avenue
that.
and Turn of a Friendly Card or Cherry
Yeah.
Red. And then these last couple, Pyramid and this new one, have been through a label called Cooking Vinyl. So,
Yep.
yeah, you've
I
got
got
those
that
there.
guy.
So
Not my favorite, by the way. Not my favorite.
Now, Pyramid was the first one to have an Atmos mix, right?
Right.
The rest were just 5.1. Or really, they were kind of more quad than 5.1. Alan doesn't really put much in the center channel on his mixes. I will say, though, because I do have the box set, because I really like this album, and I have heard the Atmos mix, I thought it was really, really bright, was my initial reaction to it. And I would agree with that. I've had that problem with a couple of these, starting, I want to say, with Ammonia Avenue. I think Tails and I sound really good. Those would be the ones I'd recommend. Musically, I would say Eye in the Sky is probably my favorite record by them. I mean, the 1-2 punch of Sirius into the title track is just killer.
Yeah.
And there's other great songs in this. Silence and I, Psychobabble, Old and Wise. Yeah, Psychobabble's killer.
Yes, it is.
Step
by Step. That song gets stuck in my head all the time.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every track on that album was great. The only downside on the 5.1 mixes, You're Gonna Get Your Fingers Burned, is an up mix. For whatever reason, they didn't have the multi-track for that song. But yeah, starting with Ammonia Avenue, I feel like they've been kind of bright sounding. Turn of a Friendly Card, especially. Pyramid, I haven't heard, because I agree with you that it's just not kind of one of my favorite records of theirs.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that.
I'm curious, to hear what Alan would have done with the Atmos mix. They didn't put it on Apple Music for some reason. Maybe they wanted to keep it exclusive to the Blu-ray. But yeah, this new one I was really excited for, because this is probably my second favorite after Eye in the Sky. And I have an old mobile fidelity LP pressing, one of those half speed masters. I bought it at one of those record fairs or something. And I'm sure there's, better ways you could listen to this than vinyl. I think there was a standalone SACD. Of course, there's the original CD pressing, but it's a very good sounding record.
It is. Yeah.
One of the songs, I would even say, you could test a stereo system with, is there's this song called The Voice that has this great bass line that really, you can really crank it up and it really hits.
Or even breakdown. Man, talk about a great bass line.
Yeah, and the songs are great. Wouldn't Want to Be Like You is one of their biggest hits. And listening to this mix, I thought, as usual, Alan has done a great job kind of spreading the instruments out and creatively placing things. But man, it's bright.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell a funny anecdote. So I went to go buy this off of Alan's website, and I was getting really frustrated because they were throwing CAPTCHA at me. And it kept saying, "Prove you're not a robot." I'm like, I got to prove I'm not a robot to buy iRobot? Asmanov would have a field day with this.
Honestly, yeah.
But yeah, I agree that it's a little bright sounding. But, it's all right. I've heard much worse. And,
your mileage may vary with these things. Different speakers, different preferences. What have
now,
you.
Speaking of the MoFi edition, I was in a record shop up in the Robinson Mall in Pittsburgh, and they had a MoFi gold disc copy for $30. And when I saw that, I thought, that's got to be too good to be true. But now I want to go back and get it.
Well,
I bet that sounds amazing.
One thing I haven't tried on the Blu-ray is there is a transfer of the original stereo mix, right?
Oh.
So I wonder how the mastering is on that. If it's a loudness war master, or if it sounds good. Sound off in the comments if you've heard it.
I think it's very likely that we'll do a review of the Alan Parsons Project album, because I know my subscribers love this stuff. So we'll probably do a dedicated review.
Good opportunity to talk about all the other ones. Just be like a Alan Parsons Project, covering all the albums. And there's a bunch of associated Alan solo records that have been done in surround. There's this one called On Air from the mid 90s that had one of those DTS releases, a DTS CD. Then there's a couple of recent ones that were done on DVD. There's one called The Secret that came out around the time of the pandemic. And I think there's one more after that. I have The Secret and I remember enjoying it. Yeah.
All right. So we have one more record to talk about, and I want to emphasize that this is entirely speculation, but I don't think it's too unrealistic. So in previous years, we have gotten a Frank Zappa Dolby Atmos release in December, usually around Frank's birthday. I think I want to say Waka Jawaka came out around that time. I think Apostrophe, or maybe it was Overnight Sensation, may have also been around a December release or something like that. Now, we did get One Size Fits All this year already, so
and cheaper than cheap.
And cheaper than cheap. So, it's possible they may make us wait for Bongo Fury. But way back when, and I say way back when, and I mean July, but when One Size Fits All was released or even announced, there was a very reliable source that said that Bongo Fury would come at the end of the year. And so I think it's likely that this will be a situation where it's announced early December or even late November, and it'll come out around the 19th, maybe. So again, this is wild speculation, but I think this is in the pipeline.
If not, by the end of this year, probably next year.
Well, next year, I think, and we're kind of trailing into our 2026 speculation video by including this, but I think next year it's very likely that we're going to get Freak Out in Dolby Atmos, because Joe Travers has said that he has a Freak Out 60th anniversary project, which he's proposing to Universal. And that was a couple months ago that he talked about that on the Steve Hoffman forums. So I think it's very likely we'll get this one probably sooner than later. And I think we'll also get Freak Out next year. But just in terms of like other Zappa releases, I think it would be absolutely brilliant to get more of the Caribou sessions from the late 70s. Some of that material is going to show up here, which is interesting. But I would like to see at some point a release of the Sleep Dirt and Studio Tan records, because both of those are connected to the One Size Fits All sessions. And there's a song, and I use the term song very loosely. There's a piece entitled "The Adventures of Gregory Peccary," which, if they somehow miss The Adventures of Gregory Peccary on their Atmos remixing campaign, that would be a huge mistake, in my opinion, because that song was made for Atmos. But anyway, this is all to say that any Frank in Atmos is more than welcome. Karma Auger and Eric Goebel are two of the best engineers in the business. And a part of me just wants some Captain Beefheart and Atmos, and this is probably the closest we're ever going to get.
Yeah. I mean, I've been telling you the one I'm waiting for is Joe's Garage in Atmos.
Likewise.
But I think it's going to be a while until we get there.
Do you think we'll get Joe's Garage first or the Wall first?
Well, what year was Joe's Garage? Like
79.
79.
Yeah.
Maybe in the same year.
Oh my God. My head would explode.
I would hope that they know that they should do the Wall earlier than 2029.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wonder with the Floyd stuff, like it took them a couple years to put Animals out.
Yeah.
Maybe that was before the Sony merger though, where Sony owns the catalog now, so the whatever kind of interpersonal issues there are in the band supposedly don't affect these releases anymore.
So, tell us about the poll on Immersive Audio Album. That's still going on, right?
Yes, through December 5, we're doing our Listener's Choice Awards, where we're in the nominations phase. So I've put up a very exhaustive list of titles you could choose from. And there's also a write-in option if there's something I missed on my list. And in early December, we're going to announce a nominee. We're going to announce 5 nominees in the streaming category, and in the physical media Blu-ray / digital download. And then we're going to do another poll for people to vote on those 5 nominees that will end sometime in early 2026. I think we're going to announce the winner in the beginning of February. So go ahead and vote. We've gotten a lot of votes this year, which has been really good. And
good.
Like I always say, sometimes people are disappointed with the albums the Grammys pick. So if you want your voice to be heard about what you think the best immersive music release of the year is, go ahead and vote.
And there'll be a link to that in the description This is the part of the program where we say that go ahead and let us know which one of these releases you're most excited for. We'll definitely be looking at these comments, and your response will certainly determine which releases we choose to review. And I think it's very likely we're going to review iRobot. We're probably going to do at least one of the New Order albums, if not all three. We're going to probably do the Bryan Ferry record. We'll definitely do Pink Floyd, because I know that that's, my subscribers love Pink Floyd. But
the next video we have scheduled is Songs from the Big Chair.
That's right.
Which will probably also double as like a quick overview of what's available from Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
Because they have 4 studio albums that are out in surround, and they're, throughout their kind of key period in the 80s, they only made 3 records.
Yeah. And they're 3 very different, but great in their own right records.
You have 3 records that were labored over.
Yeah.
Particularly the last one.
Yeah. If you've got the Seeds of Love box set, you can kind of hear all that labor. And it's illuminating to listen to that, especially the live stuff when they were doing the live demos prior to recording. That's a great disc. But yeah, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Don't forget to subscribe to both of our channels. If you click to subscribe, you're going to see my channel as well as Jonathan's channel appear. And just make sure you're subscribed to both of us, because Jonathan does his own content and it's great. He's doing some cool interviews, some stuff with Atmos engineers in the pipeline that's going to be really exciting. And also subscribe to me so you keep track of my reviews, news on surround sound albums, and pretty much anything else that just catches my fancy. I kind of use my channel to just do whatever I feel like, and I love the freedom to do so. So Jonathan, I want to thank you once again, and I'll see you very soon to talk some Tears for Fears.
Look for some deals on surround discs online.
Yeah.
That's what we recommend.
That actually
go to the IAA Black Friday sale. Actually, that's what I recommend first.
There's the IAA Black Friday sale, but also Rhino Records is doing like a 15% off deal. So if you want the Doors set, for instance, that's available on there. Well, this will come out on Cyber Monday, so I'm thinking a lot of that stuff will still be going. So, all right, Jonathan, thank you again, and take care. And look forward to telling all the folks about how we fell head over heels for Songs from the Big Chair all over again. So take care, my friend, and we'll talk soon.
You too.
All right. Catch you later.